Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really zoning in on something vital for a lot of you. How to nail that Ruby on Rails technical interview.
Hmm.
Whether you're the one hiring, trying to spot top talent, or you're prepping to land that great Rails job yourself, well, understanding what these interviews actually cover is just key.
Absolutely.
hmm
And we've got some great material to work with provided by our listener. We're looking at articles from places like Code Mentor, TeamCubate,
Yeah, and there's a cheatography cheat sheet too. Very handy.
super handy. Plus, real interview questions from Code Interview and Anywhere Club, and even, discussions from developers on Reddit gives you that ground level view.
Exactly. So our mission today, pretty straightforward. We're diving into all this, pulling out the absolute core skills and knowledge areas that pop up again and again in these Rails interviews.
Right.
We want to give you that focused understanding.
A roadmap, essentially.
Okay, let's get started. Foundational stuff first. What is Ruby on Rails? What's the elevator pitch?
Sure. So, across the board, the sources agree.
Mm.
It's an open source web application framework,
Yeah.
written in Ruby, of course.
Mhm.
And the big philosophy behind it is convention over configuration.
Right. Heard that phrase a lot. What does it actually mean in practice?
It means Rails makes smart assumptions for you about how things should be named, where files should go,
Wow.
stuff like that. So you don't have to configure every little detail. It speeds things up.
Okay.
And structurally, it follows the model view controller pattern, MVC.
Yeah.
MVC. Okay. Let's break that down quickly. For anyone maybe less familiar, how does a request actually flow through that?
Yeah.
What's the journey?
Good question. So the cheatography sheet and code interview questions map it out nicely. A user does something, right? Clicks a link, submits a form.
Yep.
That request hits the controller first. The controller's like the traffic cop.
Okay.
It then talks to the model. The model's job is all about the data, fetching it from the database, updating it.
Got it. The database interaction layer. Exactly. So the model does its thing, sends the data or confirmation back to the controller.
Mm-hmm.
Then the controller says, okay, which view should I use to show this? It picks the view, passes the data to it.
And the view generates the HTML or whatever gets sent back.
Precisely. The view renders the final output that the user sees. So user controller, model type controller, view user, that's the cycle.
Okay, solid foundation. Now let's dig into what interviewers are actually looking for. What are those key assessment areas that keep coming up in our sources?
Well, a really basic starting point, but critical, is understanding object-oriented programming,
Mm,
OOP, specifically in Ruby.
right.
The Code Mentor article really hammers this home. In Ruby, everything is an object. That's like the fundamental paradigm.
So you need to grasp classes, objects, inheritance, that kind of stuff.
Definitely. The basic object model, how things relate, it's foundational.
Okay. And building on that, I imagine code quality is huge. It's not just about knowing theory, but can you write decent code?
Exactly. Clean code, maintainable code. Code Mentor stresses this. They even mention tools like Reek and Rubocop.
Ah, the linters and static analysis tools.
Yeah, they help spot code smells. Those little signs that maybe your code isn't quite right or could be improved. Knowing these tools shows you care about quality.
Makes sense. So O would be basics, clean code. What about higher level structure, design patterns?
Yes, definitely. Design patterns come up.
Hmm.
Code Mentor specifically mentions solid principles.
Solid. Always good to know.
Right. And also things like creational, behavioral, structural patterns. It shows you understand different established ways to solve common problems. You can pick the right tool for the job, so to speak.
It's about thoughtful design, not just hacking something together.
Exactly. Shows you've thought about maintainability, flexibility, all that good stuff.
Okay. Now, something that always seems critical in interviews, testing.
Oh, absolutely non-negotiable. You need testing skills. And Code Mentor points out it's often more than just basic unit tests. They highlight mocking.
Mocking, using test doubles, right. Subs, mocks, spies.
All those techniques. You need to know how to use them.
Can we quickly clarify the difference based on Code Mentor?
Sure. So a test double is the general term for any kind of fake object used in testing.
Okay.
A stub is a simple double where you just pre-program its responses.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you call this method, return this value.
Got it.
A mock is similar, but you also set expectations. Like, I expect this method to be called exactly once with these arguments. The test fails if it's not.
Ah, so it verifies interactions.
Right. And a spy is a double that kind of watches how it's used. It records which methods were called, with what arguments, how many times. so you can check that after the fact.
Okay, so different ways to isolate the code under test and control its environment. Makes sense.
Precisely. It's all about making your tests focused and reliable.
Now, shifting slightly. Ruby's approach to code sharing. It uses modules and mictons quite heavily, doesn't it, since it only has single inheritance?
That's right. Modules are Ruby's way around the limitations of single inheritance. Code Mentor talks about the main keywords: include, extend, and prepend. Understanding the difference is key.
Okay, what is the difference?
So, include makes the module's methods available as instance methods on the class. You call them on objects of the class.
Right, standard mixin behavior.
Yep. Extend makes the module's methods class methods. You call them directly on the class itself.
Okay.
And prepend. It's a bit newer. It also adds instance methods like include, but it puts my module in front of the class in the method lookup chain.
Oh, interesting. So the modules method overrides the class's method if they have the same name.
Exactly. It gives you a way to wrap or modify existing class methods.
Yep.
Pretty powerful.
Very cool. Okay, security, always critical. What specific Rails security things do interviewers focus on?
CSRF comes up a lot. Cross-site request forgery, Code Mentor, and Anywhere Club both mention it. You need to know how Rails protects against it.
Which is usually with those authenticity tokens hidden in forms, right?
That's the main mechanism, yeah. Rails handles a lot of it automatically. Also, strong parameters. Code Interview brings that up.
Ah, preventing mass assignment vulnerabilities.
Exactly. Controlling exactly which attributes can be updated through forms or API requests. Super important.
Okay, so CSRF protection, strong parameters. What about Rails interacting with other systems, like building APIs?
Yeah, that's very relevant. CodeMentor mentions building Rails as a backend API, maybe for a JavaScript frontend or a mobile app.
API-only mode, perhaps.
Could be, or just having API endpoints alongside regular views, and also just using third-party APIs within your Rails app, so knowing how to make HTTP requests, handle JSON, that sort of thing.
Makes sense. Okay, let's transition to probably the biggest piece for many Rails apps. The database interaction, ActiveRecord.
The heart of many Rails apps, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, multiple sources confirm ActiveRecord is the ORM, Object Relational Mapper.
The bridge between Ruby code and the database.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lets you work with database tables as if they were Ruby objects. Handles CRU, create, read, update, delete, manages migrations, defines associations.
Let's talk migrations first. Those files that change the database schema, why are they so important?
Crucial for teamwork and managing database changes over time.
Yeah.
As several sources highlight, they keep everyone's database structure consistent across different environments: development, testing, production.
Version control for the database schema.
That's a great way to put it. And they let you roll back changes safely if needed. The code interview example, adding an age column to users, that's a classic everyday migration task.
Right. Okay, then associations. Hasn't any belongs to all that jazz. What are the key ones to know?
The cheat sheet in code interview lists the main ones. Has many belongs to, hey son, hey Zam belongs to many, and has many through.
Okay, and the fundamental difference, say, between belongs to and has many. Anywhere Club clarified that?
Yeah, they put it simply. Belongs to puts the foreign key, like userid, on the model where you declare it. So a post belongs to a user. The userid is in the post table.
Got it. Child points to parent.
Right. And has many is the inverse. A user has many posts. The foreign key is still on the posts table, pointing back to the user. It just defines the other side of that relationship.
Makes sense. What about polymorphic associations? They sound complicated.
They can be, but they're powerful. Mentioned in the cheat sheet in code interview, they let a model belong to more than one other type of model, using a single association.
Like comments belonging to either posts or pictures.
Exactly. You'd have a comment obliged and a commentable type column on the comments table. The type column stores post or picture.
Clever. Okay, performance. Lazy loading versus eager loading. Big topic.
Huge. Code Mentor explains it well. Lazy loading is the default. Rails only fetches associated data when you actually ask for it.
Which sounds efficient, but...
But it leads to the n+1 query problem, the classic performance killer.
Ah, yes, the n+1. Reddit mentioned that too.
Right. If you load 100 posts, one query, and then loop through them asking for each post's author, 100 more queries, that's n+1 queries.
Bad. So eager loading fixes that.
Yes. Using methods like includes and ActiveRecord tells Rails, hey, when you fetch these posts, also fetch their authors all at once. It usually results in just one or two much more efficient queries.
So understanding includes is key for performance.
Absolutely. And knowing when to use it.
Beyond loading, what about other advanced database stuff? Querying, caching.
Good point. Code Mentor and Anywhere Club talk about Advanced ActiveRecord querying and caching is vital. Page caching, action caching, fragment caching,
Lots of caching layers.
SQL caching, low-level caching. Knowing the different types and where to apply them is important. Code interview also flags things like knowing the difference between find and find by.
Find raises an error. If not found, find by returns nil.
Exactly, and knowing find or created by. Also database transactions, super important for data integrity.
Right, the example where you create a user and their profile together.
Yeah, the transaction ensures that either both get created or if something fails, like the profile creation, the user creation is rolled back too. Keeps data consistent.
Prevents orphaned records. Makes total sense. Okay, let's step back from the database. How does Rails figure out what code to run for a given URL? Routing route.
That's the router's job, defined in configures.rb. Multiple sources stress this. It maps URLs and HTTP methods to controller actions.
And it uses RESTful principles heavily.
Very much so. The cheat sheet and Anywhere Club use the articles example. Get articles maps to the index action, PS articles to create, get articles.id to show, putpat articles.id to update, delete articles.id to destroy.
And the resources helper sets that all up automatically.
Yep. Resources.articles in your routes file creates all those standard RESTful routes for you. Convention over configuration again.
Got it. And the controllers, what's their main job once the router sends a request their way?
Controllers handle the request as the cheat sheet and code interview note. They process parameters, interact with models.
The traffic cop again.
Pretty much. They orchestrate the response. Fetch data, maybe save data, then decide what to send back. Usually by rendering a view or maybe sending JSON for an API.
And the views are just about presentation, showing the data.
Primarily, yes. Views display the data. The cheat sheet also mentions partials.
Reusable view snippets.
Exactly. Great for de-drawing up your views, reusing things like forms, navigation bars, etc.
Okay. We mentioned temporary messages with the flash hash. What about storing user-specific info across requests, sessions, and cookies?
Yep. Sessions and cookies. Cheat sheet Anywhere Club. Sessions store data linked to a user across multiple requests, often used for login status.
And Rails usually stores the session data in a cookie?
By default, yes. Anywhere Club points out the importance of secure cookies for this to prevent tampering.
Makes sense. What about code that runs automatically at certain points, like before saving a record, callback?
Callbacks, exactly. Methods triggered at specific lifecycle moments. The cheat sheet lists common ones. Before save, after create, before validation, etc.
Useful for things like setting default values or triggering other actions.
Maintaining data consistency, sending notifications, things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, and the cheat sheet clarifies delete versus destroy.
Ah, right. Destroy runs callbacks, delete doesn't.
Precisely. Destroy runs the whole lifecycle, including callbacks, like deleting associated records, while delete just issues the SQL delete statement directly, skips callbacks. Important difference.
Definitely. Now, the Rails ecosystem relies heavily on gems. What's the main takeaway there?
Gems are just packaged Ruby libraries, as Anywhere Club puts it. Reusable code bundles.
Like plugins.
Sort of, yeah. They add functionality, authentication with Devise, password hashing with bcrypt, front-end stuff with Bootstrap, pagination with Kaminari.
Yeah.
The list goes on.
Cheat Sheet and Anywhere Club listed a bunch.
They did. And the Reddit thread asking about essential gems shows how central they are to actual Rails development. You need to know common ones and how to use them.
Okay. And underneath Rails, what's the foundation? Rack?
Rack, yep. Code Mentor and Anywhere Club mention it. It's that low-level interface between the web server, like Puma or Unicorn, and the Ruby framework, like Rails or Sinatra. Provides a standard way to handle HTTP requests.
Good to know it exists. Now, general problem solving. How does that fit into a Rails interview?
Well, Code Mentor and Reddit both suggest practicing algorithms and data structures. It might not be Rails specific.
Like LeetCode code style problems.
Could be. They want to see how you think, how you approach a problem logically, how you write code to solve it, regardless of the framework. HackerRank, LeetCode. Good practice.
Okay. We touched on service objects earlier. Can we expand on why they're useful?
Sure. Service objects, as Code Mentor and Code Interview explain, are basically plain Ruby classes that encapsulate a single piece of business logic.
Logic that doesn't quite fit in a model or controller.
Exactly. Like processing a complex payment, generating a report, interacting with an external service in a specific way. It keeps your controllers and models cleaner and focused. The Code Interview payment service example is perfect.
Improves testability too, I imagine.
Hugely. Much easier to test a focused service object than a bloated controller action.
What about handling file uploads, like images or documents?
That's active storage territory. Code Interview, Anywhere Club. It's Rails' built-in way to handle uploads to cloud storage, like S3, Google Cloud, or just locally.
Using things like Hey Seni attached on your models.
Yep, provides a nice abstraction for attaching files to records.
And sending emails. Standard stuff.
Action Mailer, build right in. Code Mentor, Code Interview, Anywhere Club all mention it. You create mailer classes similar to controllers and corresponding views for the email bodies. Pretty straightforward.
Okay. What about more modern development practices? CI/CD. Cloud deployment.
Increasingly important. Code Mentor notes familiarity with CI/CD pipelines. Automating builds, tests, deployments, and cloud platforms is often expected now.
Like AWS, Heroku, GitHub Actions, Jenkins.
Exactly. Experience there is definitely a plus. The sources don't dive deep, but it's part of the modern landscape.
And real-time features. Chat, live notifications.
That's Action Cable, Rails integrated WebSocket solution. Code Mentor and Anywhere Club mentioned it for building those real-time features.
What about tasks that take too long for a web request? Background jobs.
Active Job. Anywhere Club covers this. It's the Rails framework for running jobs asynchronously in the background, using queuing systems like Sidecocus or Delayed Job, essential for performance.
Internationalization. Supporting multiple languages.
ITN, built in. Anywhere Club notes Rails uses YAML files for translations and the IETN.t helper method to look them up based on the current locale.
API versioning. Does Rails handle that?
Not out of the box, according to Anywhere Club. But it's a common need, and there are established patterns using namespacing or headers to manage different API versions.
Okay. And finally, front-end assets. CSS, JavaScript.
Asset pipeline, sprockets, is the traditional way. Anywhere Club mentions it. Compresses, concatenates preprocessed assets, adds fingerprints for caching.
And Webpacker for more modern JavaScript.
Exactly. Integrates Webpack for bundling JavaScript modules, managing dependencies via Yarn NPM. Increasingly common, especially with JS-heavy front ends.
Phew. Okay, that covers a lot of Rails specifics, but it seems like core Ruby knowledge is also essential, right?
Absolutely critical. Anywhere Club lists of several key distinctions interviewers might ask about.
Like string versus symbol.
Performance and mutability differences there. Also, understanding the yield keyword for blocks. The meaning of self, depending on context.
Self can be tricky.
It can. Also, the differences between nil, empty, and blank. When to use render versus redirecto in a controller.
Subtle but important control flow differences.
Right. And validates versus validates for model validations. Even resource versus resources in routing, which the cheat sheet covers. Small details, but they show deeper understanding.
Okay, that's a massive amount of technical ground to cover. But as you mentioned, the Reddit discussion suggests it's not just about knowing the facts. Interview strategy matters too.
Hugely important. It's about communication. Can you explain concepts clearly? Even basics like class versus object, which came up on Reddit. Get to discuss design choices, talk about trade-offs. Reddit highlighted this, especially the different expectations for junior, mid, senior roles. Seniors really need to explain the why.
Justify their architectural decisions.
Exactly. And being able to review code, suggest improvements. That came up too. Pair programming exercises are also common.
Practical application, not just theory.
Right. Code interview also stressed showing practical experience, maybe through personal projects, and having a solid grasp of testing. It's the whole package.
So it's this mix of deep technical knowledge, strong communication skills, and that ability to think critically and collaborate.
That sums it up perfectly. It's not just what you know, but how you think, how you communicate, and how you'd apply that knowledge in a team.
Well, this has been an incredibly thorough deep dive. We've really unpacked the key areas for Ruby on Rails technical interviews based on all those sources. It feels like understanding these concepts gives a really solid footing.
Definitely. Whether you're the interviewer trying to assess skills or the interviewee preparing to showcase them, this covers the core landscape.
Agreed. And hopefully for you listening, this gives a much clearer picture of where to focus your energy depending on your goals.
Target your prep effectively.
Okay, let's wrap up with a final thought for you to mull over. Web development is always changing, right? So, thinking ahead, how might the core expectations for a Rails developer shift in the next few years? Especially with new frameworks popping up, but also the need to maintain all those existing Rails apps out there.
That's a great question. Adaptability versus deep specialization. The balance might change.
Something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.